Welcome to Thunderdome, bitches. Let's just start out like that, man. Just cold open. I
Dude,
tell you,
5 seconds in and you're already dropping the curse word. This is why we're not going to get syndicated.
it's not a curse word. I don't think. Well, I decided today that X is just a complete waste of time, except for Damon, who's the only person who likes our X's or tweets or whatever you want to call them. It's a waste of time, dude. Although the actor Matthew Marsden did give us a shout out on his page and a YouTube because he has his own YouTube, podcasting thing now, I guess, and he just gets on to talk. He's the guy that played Schoolboy in the Rambo movie where he was in Burma. Remember Schoolboy, the sniper with the 50 cal? Yeah. I like that actor. He was in Black Hawk Down. He's been in a few things. Pretty cool. But anyway, he said, ask me a question and I'll try to answer it. And I asked him if you had to, be a role in real life, which one would you pick? And of course he picked Schoolboy. It's like, all right, cool, man. So, but anyway, yeah, just a waste of time, dude. Nobody listens to us anyway. I think we only have 4 listeners now. So there.
So it's funny you bring that up. So my mom, the other day, she sends me a text, and it's every once in a while I have to talk my mom off the ledge because she'll read something on the internet, and she's like, "Did you hear about this?" And I'm looking at her, I'm like that is patently false, right? Even if it's something that I would like to be true, I'm just like that, Mom. That's been debunked, 1,000 times. She goes, "Have you looked into the background of BlackRock? Do you know what BlackRock is doing?" She was like, "BlackRock is going around buying real estate, buying houses and all that stuff like that." And I said, "When did you learn that?" She goes, "Well, today. I read about it today." I was like, if you listen to this podcast, it's called Culper's Canteen Cup. I don't know if you ever heard of it. You would have known that probably a year ago. Like, because we legit talked. She was like, "Oh, really? You guys talked about that?" I was like, "You don't listen, do you?" And she was like, So friends and family, man, like you say.
I'm guessing your mother is getting up there in years as my parents are, as Roger's parents are. So Josh's mom, if you are listening to this one, there's a cool thing that you can do because folks who are getting up there in years should keep their minds sharp, play games, things like that. There's this really cool thing called a Rubik's Cube that you may not have heard of it. In it, you match sides, you turn it around, and there's also this machine called Simon, where you hit the little buttons, it'll do a tone, it'll light up. I mean, those are like, you might not have ever heard of those. You never heard of BlackRock. You might not have heard of Rubik's Cube or Simon either. No, I'm just giving her a hard time. But my parents, well, sometimes they'll come at me with something like that. But so do friends.
Oh,
My
yeah,
daughter,
no, 100%.
she sent me something about China the other day. It's like, wait, I saw this last time I fell off my dinosaur. I saw this article or this situation, all the stuff we always talk about. But hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, man? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to polish off 3-pounders during this podcast. That's what I'm going to try to do.
I love it. How many do you think you can get in
this podcast? Well, it depends on how long we go. I bought 3, so they come in packs of 3 now. So I was like,
what?
Hey. Yeah, the big pounders. They come in packs.
Yeah, of 3. Yeah. They don't come in packs of 6.
The pounders. This is a big one. This is one of the big ones.
No,
I haven't seen them in 6-packs. They come in 6-packs. Oh man,
I think
that's 12
I could
beers.
be wrong. I could be wrong. Well, hey man,
beers.
No, it's only 6. It's only 6 cans.
So I know, but if it's a pounder, this is 24 ounces. So that's 2 12 ounces.
You can't look at it like that. You just got to look at that. That's one can. That's one beer. That's what you got to. That's how you got to look at it, man.
You're right.
That's what powder's what beer. Because you start telling people you drink 12 beers, people are going to start giving you the side eye.
Right.
They're going to be like,
I have a 6-pack every day.
Yeah, exactly. A 6-pack is much better.
I trained my wife. Did train her. I conditioned my wife to think that an 18-ounce can is a normal size can. So when she's at the store, she'll buy the packs of 18 ounces. And I'm just like, I don't even show her what a 12-ounce can looks like. That looks like a little baby can now. Like those little half Coke cans. To me, I look at those 12 ounces. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's a complete waste of time. And I know that Darren feels the same way.
Yeah.
Oh man.
No, for sure. So speaking of pounders and and beers and cheap beer, I am going along with my dad and my older sister in October for a couple of days to Talladega to the race
Oh, cool. Very
at
cool.
Talladega. So I've never been to a NASCAR race. I grew up. My dad, my dad watches two sports. One of them's college football, and only if it's Florida State, and he watches NASCAR. That's it. He does not. He'll watch the Braves every once in a while, but by and large, but like NASCAR is it. And so everything I know about NASCAR was just from kind of being in the living room while he was watching the race because you know dad controlled the TV, and if NASCAR was on, that's what was on for the next 3 hours. And there was no I'm going to go to my room and watch a TV because there was one TV at our house, you know, and that was it. So I was reading some stories about what goes on at Talladega. So my sister went all out. She rented this super bougie RV, bougier than Rogers, if that's possible. That's going to be in the infield, all weekend for the race. So we're going to be staying in the infield at Talladega. And I was reading up on like barbecue sauce wrestling. Apparently, they fill this giant pit with barbecue sauce, and they have wrestling matches in it. Apparently, the cops. I think there was average on like there's at like an average of 47 alcohol related arrests. Per day. At Talladega, like it's some people compared it to the white trash beach bash that they have in Florida every year in the Panhandle. So I can't wait. There's gonna be some pounders. I'm gonna be partaking probably be some Coors Light.
You need to be live streaming that. That's gonna be
Oh
awesome.
yeah, no. There's gonna be a C3 live stream. We're definitely gonna play it up, and I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna straight guerrilla campaign C3 stickers everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea. Dang, man, that's gonna be fun. Speaking of like crazy events and everything, I was thinking about spring break going on down in Florida. There's been a lot of news on that. I think spring break is kind of staggered for all the colleges, so they all show up at one time. But at the same time that's happening, I did not have Haitian cannibal invasion on my 2024 bingo card. Some crazy stuff going on in Haiti, and basically about 7,000 people broke out of prison in Haiti. And word on the street is, in congressional hearings, they're making their way to the U.S. And we can get into what's going on in Haiti. It's pretty crazy, but imagine 7,000 people showing up on a beach near Miami, on South Beach. Cannibals
during spring break.
Getting that American meat is very well marbled these days.
That's right.
That could be a sight. So I think you've been to Haiti, right?
No, Roger went to Haiti.
Okay.
I did not go to Haiti. I flew over Haiti when we went to Dom Rep. When we took the kids to spring break for Dom Rep. It's crazy because you fly over the island and you can see from from 30,000 feet exactly where Haiti stops and the Dominican Republic starts, because half of the island, a little less than half, is all brown. Like it is all brown, and it's just they cut all the tree. They do forested so much of it. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law, so they are big donators to an orphanage in Haiti. They've been multiple times, and man, the conditions that they described from the last time they were there, holy cow, absolutely crazy. I saw where all the the however many 7,000 I think you said inmates got released from the Hushkau and are running around. Dude, Haiti's bad right now, even by Haitian standards. Like it's bad. Like Haiti's always been, machetes and warlords, and it's always had gangs problem. But now I don't think there's a functioning government there.
There. It's in Jamaica. There was an international coalition that because the government fled, and they fled to Jamaica. And there's an international coalition, of course, led by the State Department, who's installed almost every government since forever there. Then every one of them has failed. And they I think today or yesterday stood up a government. I think the prime minister is going to resign. This is you're right. Haiti's a big mess, man, and it's a perfect storm of badness. It's a former slave colony, is a former French colony, and French
Yep.
colonies don't have a real good track record. And for those of you who don't know, it's on the island of Hispaniola, which like Josh said, it's split right down the middle between Haiti and Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic was a Spanish colony. So the folks in Dom Rep are Spanish speakers. They're more in line with the Hispanic community throughout Central and South America. It's kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily indistinguishable. The skin is a little bit darker in general than, say your Colombian or your Mexican, but dark skin like Guatemalans. A little bit more African features in Dom Rep, but very distinctly Hispanic. In Haiti, it's still French speaking. And man, the French didn't do them any favors when they decolonized, and it's predominantly straight up African American. They speak French. I guess, yeah, I'm African American because they're technically in the Americas. And it's just, it's been impoverished forever. They have a there is no middle class there. There is a 0.001% rich in Haiti, which I've met some wealthy Haitians who surprisingly have very light skin. Speak English, French, very well educated in the United States. And then you have everyone else in Haiti who is dirt dead broke. Hey, like you said, the only they realize, well, we do have one natural resource here in Haiti, and it's our forests. And they, like Josh said, they just clear cut them. And it's just been, since Aristide, even before Aristide, it's just been a mess. And this most recent thing is the folks weren't happy with the government. They started rioting in the streets. The biggest warlord down there is, I can't remember his name, but he's known as Barbecue. and the stuff going on in Haiti, like Josh said, even by Haitian standards, it's bad. I saw a few videos today that were just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, they're cutting off human body parts, boiling them, they're eating them. You saw one guy eating flesh off another dude that was still alive. I won't even say what part of the flesh he bit a part of the flesh off of this person. There's people being beat to death in the streets, and turns out that the government of Haiti that was in the process of fleeing, who they call Kenya? They called Kenya, I think. And Kenya was about to invade Haiti. And this is all going on under everyone's nose. It's like, man, forget about troops in Ukraine. Forget about troops in Yemen. We're about to have troops in Haiti, and it could go real bad. I've been through Haiti, stopped there for a few days, not during the hurricanes, not during anything like that. But I saw what I saw, and it is literally the worst place on earth I've ever seen. Hands down. It's the worst place. So, yeah, the Haitian cannibals, man, they're eating people in the streets over in Haiti.
It's didn't we? I remember when I got to Fort Bragg, as a brand new Joe. I remember some of my NCOs and stuff talking about how, dude, we had planes. Bill Clinton was about to invade Haiti. We had planes in the air. They were getting ready to jump in, and they turned them around. And they reinstalled because their Aristide was in power, and then there was a coup. The Haitians didn't like him or whatever the case was. Aristide was in power. He got ousted from power, and then basically Bill Clinton threatened military force if they did not put Aristide back into power. Granted, I'm obviously summarizing there and simplifying it, but another one again, another U.S. intervention, and meddling with the government. It's just not working. And Haiti is absolutely 100%, and it has been for quite some time. It's a failed country. Like it is an absolutely failed state. I did see where we were donating. I think we're giving it's a couple $100 million in aid to Haiti. And there for a second, I had to read it twice because I was like, well, there's no functioning government in Haiti, physically in Haiti right now. I was like, so who are we giving that money to exactly? Like, where is that going? So if they're, I guess if the provisional government or whoever is hanging out in Jamaica, yeah. My question for the Kenyans, because I've been to Kenya and I watched the Kenyan military operate, and oh boy, if they're going to be the ones that are going to go into Haiti, my money is on the Haitian cannibal street gangs, like because they are going to slaughter them because the Kenyans are inept. I am talking 100% inept. They wouldn't even go into Westlands Mall, when the how many 5 or 6 dudes from Al Shabaab took over the mall. Like they wouldn't even go in. They were like, "Oh man, I don't know. We gotta wait. We gotta talk about it." And you had one SAS dude was like, "Hold my beer real quick. I'll be
Yeah.
right back." Went in, like cleared the entire mall, smoked everybody, smoked all the terrorists. Was like, "All right, here you go."
Dude, I
You
love
know,
that meme. Have you seen that meme where it says at the top, or I think it's just a picture of him and he's like holding that lady coming out. He's basically carrying her and he's got his, rifle in his offhand, his non-shooting hand, and it says something like one man national assets don't exit, and it has dot dot dot.
I
That is
love
a
it.
one
I
man
love it.
national asset. That is unbelievable. You put an asset like that the right place at the right time, and it that's a national asset, dude. One person, one genetically superior national asset. Jizna.
Oh, 100%. I forget, and I can't. Man, I feel bad, but I can't remember his name. But he was on. I think he was on the Sean Ryan podcast, the Sean Ryan show, and he talked about what he could talk about and on that stuff and everything. But the dude, obviously, the dude is a certified badass. Um, you know, again, he's a SAS guy, and the
Christian
Kenyans,
Craighead. Christian
Christian
Craighead.
Craighead. Okay, the Kenyans hate the Brits. They hate them. They call them all the Brits that still live in Kenya. They call them Kenyan cowboys, and it's because it's an old British colony. They hate the Brits, but that day they were loving them some Brits. They were
Yeah.
absolutely loving some Brits.
Hey, 3 Coptic Christian priests got killed in South Africa today. How about that?
What? Not
Yeah.
well. It's not surprising in South Africa, but
Dude, Africa, man. Kenya. Yeah, but Haiti is a little taste of Africa, a little taste of many parts of Africa right in the Americas. Again, I've never seen anything like that, dude. And I stepped over a dead body in Tegucigalpa walking down the street. And seriously, never seen anything like that either. But nothing. Honduras, nothing. Doesn't hold a candle. Guatemala doesn't hold a candle. Some of the worst slums in Colombia don't hold a candle. Haiti is just another. I don't want to get into my racist liberal white woman rant yet, but I will. Remember, I told you, don't let me forget about rich
yep.
white liberal women and crocodiles. And I tried to call you because I was like, don't let me forget about this. And because I was driving and I was like, I'll forget this. I'm not going to write it down. I'll forget this. And they always say the good ideas stick with you. Well, hardly any ideas stick with me. I don't have very many good ideas. So I just went ahead and called a couple people and I said, hey, check this out. So I could repeat it so it would burn in my mind so I could bring it up tonight. But I think Haiti, Africa, kind of go into this idea that I have about, and it's not just women, it's men too. But I don't want to get into it yet. So what do you think is going to happen with this Haiti thing? You think they're going to reinstall another government and it'll just calm down? I don't know. That's my bet.
I think so. I mean, I think so. But it's gonna, it's not going to get any better. I think they'll install some type of provisional government, and it'll last for 6 to 12 months, and then somebody else is going to vie for power and everything. Because, dude, I mean, the first thing you got to do is for any area, whether you're trying to, is you have to establish law and order. There's no military. There's no police force. You have to bring in outsiders, and God, I hate to say this, but it's going to wind up, and it's going to, it's going to fall to. It's going to fall to the United Nations. They're going to put a United Nations. Yep, they're going to put a United Nations peacekeeping force in there, which is just going to make things exponentially worse. And that UN peacekeeping force, it's going to wind up. So, and that's I texted you guys the other night. I was watching it with my dad while he's here in town. Was the siege of Jadotville,
Oh
about
yeah.
the UN peacekeep the Irish UN peacekeepers in the Congo in the 60s. Dude, that's what's going to happen. You're going to put some UN peacekeepers into Port-au-Prince somewhere, and they're going to put them in a little, a little camp, a little fob, if you will, and that thing's going to get overrun. It's going to look like The Walking Dead. You're going to have the Haitian cannibals. It's going to be swarms just eating UN peacekeepers. You see little blue helmets, all bloodied up, rolling around in that red dirt. It's going to be bad.
Yeah, there can be in a place like Haiti or Mogadishu. There can't be rules. The rules of engagement go away. They need to go away. Obviously, I mean, preaching to the choir here, talking to you, but man, those folks don't have any rules, and there's many reasons why the UN peacekeeping force doesn't work. But any European force that went in there would have the same problems because they don't let their commanders on the ground make decisions. The rules of engagement are always so strict, and it's just a recipe for massacre. I mean, like in Rwanda, for instance, you had that UN peacekeeping crew, and you had some Belgians there that were no Canadians. It's a Canadian commander there. There were Belgian troops under his command, but the simple fact is, I read his whole book, and it boiled down to this: the rules of engagement had his hands tied, and he knew he was going to get absolutely massacred if he did anything to try to stop that massacre, that genocide.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's like you said, a recipe for disaster. UN peacekeeping forces are absolutely worthless. Absolutely. I think we've said on this podcast, the UN has done very little good in this world since its inception. Very little good. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. I'll give Nikki Haley this. She was a good UN ambassador. For real. Like some of the stuff that she would say right on the floor of the UN, I was like, okay, good. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I mean, you take a look at the UN right now. 2 weeks ago, they finally pulled out of the Congo. How long have they been in the Congo? Well, they said since the 60s. That was, I don't know if that was that was probably their first foray into the Congo was in the 60s. They just pulled out 2 weeks ago. And guess what? Guess what's going on in the Congo? It ain't peaceful. I mean, people are still getting macheted to death left and right. Like you were talking about Rwanda. Between the who was that, the Hutus and the Tutsis.
There was
just straight macheting people to death. Like it's one thing. It's one thing to it's one thing to shoot somebody, right? Because you can do that from a distance. Man, when you're talking about like killing somebody with a machete, bro, that's up close and personal.
Like that, you got to really want to kill him. I mean, we've talked about. I think we talked about this. That dude, that colonel, wrote that book called On Killing. You read that?
Yeah, Grossman.
Grossman. Most of it's garbage, I think. But my opinion, most of it's garbage. But there is one chapter where he talks about what you're saying right there is the passion to kill someone, along with the passion to stay alive while you're being attacked. His theory is it's directly related to the distance and the power of the weapon that you're using. So if somebody comes at you and they're trying to kill you with their fists and you can't get out of that room or whatever, a lot of people, you and me, for instance, would fight for our lives, right? Every fiber of our being would be trying to get out of there because this person is trying to kill me with their bare hands. Knife, think about it. Somebody comes at you with a knife. Let's say you have a knife too. You can be a little bit more careful. You'll be avoiding that blade, right? Gun, from 50 meters away. You're going to be moving a little faster. You're going to try to get, a gun from 30 meters away or 300 meters away. You got a little bit more time. The resistance goes down a little bit. You still want to stay alive. You're still scared. But it's not that same thing of fighting with your bare hands for your life. Take artillery. You cover, you're not going to move. You're just hoping it doesn't hit you. And then let's go all the way to a nuclear weapon. We always used to joke in Amarillo because they have Pantex out there. It's like, man, when the siren goes up, we're grabbing our lawn chairs and we're going to drive as close as we can to Pantex and just watch the ultimate sunrise. We completely gave up. We completely gave up because the distance of the weapon traveling and the power of it, you just give up. So but it's also there's a correlation there with how bad you want to kill somebody. And I've always wondered, like watching Braveheart and Gladiator, and you see the machetes in Rwanda and Haiti. How did they get all of those men so worked up to want to get into that form of mortal combat with another person? Like, what are your theories? Like, how did they get them so worked up to want to do that, or to charge across the field? I mean, they had to know what was going to happen. I don't know, dude. I've always wondered about that.
Well, I think a large part of it was that's just the way it was done. People knew, hey, if we go to war, this is what has to happen. In that, but and the other part I think of it is culture. I think a lot of it, has to do with the culture piece. So, but as far as what do you do to get them, get everybody's dander up? I don't think it's any different then than it is now. Is you get out there and you give them the go get one for the Gipper, speech. But I think a lot of it has to do with the culture, that warrior spirit. Because you think about even the Civil War. The Civil War, there was quite a bit of hand to hand with bayonets. Fighting, and then really, I mean, you keep going into every war after that. There was instances of hand to hand, especially you take a look at the Pacific in World War II. A lot of hand to hand stuff, a lot of fighting and grappling, and knives and entrenching tools and everything. Especially with the Japanese banzai charges and everything. So I don't know. I would have to say culture is the big one on that. But
And
when
I
you
think
take a
that,
look at, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Uh,
If you take a look at,
I was just gonna say, when you take a look at now, I don't know. I hate to say it's civil and more civilized. I don't know that killing, another human being will ever be, we could ever classify that as, doing it in a civilized manner. But now it's when you take a look at certain cultures, and I say, and I'm going to use the continent of Africa, at least what I saw in the Horn, multiple countries in the Horn of Africa, man, it was absolutely nothing for somebody to walk up and just whack somebody in the head with a machete. Like none. They wouldn't even think twice about it. And you start looking at us, you start looking at a lot of the Western civilization, and that's just not. It's by and large, it's not a thing. Has it happened before? Sure, but it's not a thing. But I mean, you see the same thing out of gangs like MS-13. And you've seen it. More than Roger or I have, dude. I don't know if you remember when that they hacked that lady up with a machete in the parking lot at Springfield Mall, and you're like,
yeah.
damn, like that's again, like that's personal. Like that's personal. And so it's
I don't know. I just can't imagine getting so upset. I don't know. It's hard to, for us to put ourselves. I could imagine, obviously, being in combat, but not being so angry that I hack somebody up with a machete. Just, I don't know. It's hard. I mean, we're civilized. That's all there is to it. One explanation. Josh and I are going to drop some knowledge on y'all during this podcast. One explanation for getting all these, troops, back in the day, all worked up. Y'all have heard of the term, he's going berserk, right? He's going berserk. And most people know what that comes from, the Viking berserkers, that would storm the beaches and stuff. But that word actually comes from the Old Norse for Bjorn, which means bear, and surker, meaning coat. So bear coat, right? So when these Vikings were just raping and pillaging all along the coasts of Northern Europe, they referred to themselves as bearcoats, and other people heard that. They heard berserker, so that's what it came to be known as. And these berserkers would take hallucinogenic drugs before they went into battle. Man, I think we talked about it before, Josh. maybe we'll go down this rabbit hole. I mean, we've only been recording for half an hour, but of the fearsome forces throughout the world in history, I mean, if you had to go up against one of them, or you want to avoid one of them more than most, like the Berserkers, the Vikings, I would not want to be on a shoreline village seeing those ships come to shore. That's a tough one, dude. Those guys were absolutely insane violent. The Mongol hordes, that's another one, but at least you'd be killed by arrows with the Mongol hordes. What I didn't realize about the Mongol hordes, Josh, is that, yeah, they did kill a lot. They left, towers of bones, but they would give the enemy soldiers an opportunity to join the horde. I never knew
Yeah.
that. I just figured they killed everybody. But no, one of the reasons they grew in numbers is because they adopted people in, taught them how to ride horses, taught them how to shoot arrows, and it went from there. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Mongols are really interesting. Not only would they not kill everybody, they'd show up, and basically they almost always gave everybody the option when they showed up. It was, hey, you bend the knee and we don't rape and pillage everything, or you don't bend the knee and all bets are off. And generally speaking, that's kind of the way warfare went, in the 12th, 13th century, when somebody showed up to lay siege. But the Mongols, again, they would pick and choose. They'd be like, okay, we're taking her for our harem, or whatever. But yeah, very rarely did they just go in and just lay waste to everybody. The Mongols actually allowed, and Genghis started it. They allowed people to practice whatever religion they wanted. There is a number of of Christians and Muslims and Buddhist area. Like there was a large number. They established one of the first tax systems that came that followed along. And they had tax assessors, tax collectors, and everything. And not that the Mongols were a peaceful people, but they were pretty interesting. They just didn't ride around and kill every living thing that they came across. At least with them, you had a chance. If you're an English monk, on the coast in a monastery, and Ragnar shows up, that's probably going to be a wrap for you. You're either going to get killed or you're going to get taken into slavery. That's going to be one of your two options. They're not letting you stay there, and they just come by and collect taxes, once a month. So out of anybody that I would not want to face, as far as historical armies go, the Vikings would probably be at the top of my list. Simply because they were not akin. They did not leave you as they found you 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of depends on how you're facing them and what the context is. Like if you are a general, commanding, an entire army, that's a different story than if you're the foot soldier facing the enemy, right? It'd be two different things. But I'm looking at this this map of the spread of the Mongol Empire, and it looks like to me, just looking at it and how it spread, that they would have kept going in every direction, if not for one of two things. And I think the main thing is geography, right? They never went into India. It stops right at Nepal from China because, dude, they just couldn't get around the damn Himalayas. I mean, that's a pretty big terrain feature. So the geography stopped them in a few places. It looks like the geography might have kind of stopped them in Romania. It's funny, in Iraq, they stopped right at the Euphrates. They didn't expand further than that. But I'm looking at when they expanded into Eastern Europe, and this is the other factor. So you've got geography. Of course, they didn't expand north into Russia because that's damn Siberia. Yeah, it's just too cold. And there's nothing to eat out there. But It looks like in Eastern Europe, you got to watch out for Eastern Europeans, man. They'll fight pretty hard. So that would be the other factor is people who are just too hard headed to give up. And plus, you got to think about this. I mean, by that time, the Mongol Empire had spread so far that they were supply lines weren't really a thing back then. But what were we talking about earlier? They're adopting these new soldiers, they're training them and everything. So maybe those soldiers that they had, those horsemen, weren't as deadly as they were back when they were taking, Ukraine and, southern Russia. I don't know. It's very interesting. They just could have kept going. I know a lot of that has to do with Genghis Khan, winding down in years, his son taking over. I can't remember Genghis Khan's name. It was like start with a T, like Talmadge or something.
Yeah, when he was born, it was I can't remember. Oh man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. If you look that up, the other unique thing about the Mongols was, a lot of when you go back and you take a look at a lot of societies back then, it was feudalism. All right. And a lot of that came from, all right, there's a bloodline and they're going to follow that bloodline. And okay, that person's son is going to be the next, king and stuff like that. The Mongols actually elected their leaders, at the Kurultai. And so that was unique because it didn't, just because you had a son didn't mean your son was going to be the next Khan. It could have been, anybody else because they were going to come to a Kurultai or the Kurultai. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And elect their leaders. But yeah, Ogaday took over from Genghis. The other
Temujin.
So when they got to Eastern Europe, the Poles, they ran into the Poles, and I don't think people give the Poles enough credit in a lot of things. Like the Poles, when the Poles want to fight, the Poles will fight. It takes them a while to get to that point, but when they want to fight, they can fight.
That's why both the Nazis and the Soviets, when they went into Poland, both of them went in hot, real hot,
you had to.
And hard. Yeah,
you had to. You couldn't go in there soft because you were going to get punched in the mouth. But the Mongols actually made it to the Japanese mainland. After they took over China, they made it to the Japanese mainland, and they got kind of pushed back. I don't think they were ready for the mountainous terrain that they had to fight in on the Japanese mainland to kind of kick their ass. Because not only did you think about the fellas say all the time, professionals think tactics, or amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics. The Mongols looked at it and was like, okay, we can get some fighters over there, but damn, we got to get some logistics across that too. But I think the Mongols are fascinating. And in fact, if you watch there's a series, I think it's on Netflix or something right now. It's called Marco Polo, and it chronicles a lot of kind of Kublai Khan in his time as Khan, and it goes through kind of Kurultais and disputes and how the Mongol Empire kind of functioned, and then how it started to fracture after Kublai Khan, and that's kind of how it fell. It's almost the same thing as the Romans, because the Golden Horde broke off, and each of a lot of the different hordes in the Mongol Empire became politicized, and they went on their own path. They started they're like, no, we're going to go do our own thing now. And hey, man, Lincoln said it: a house divided cannot stand, and that's how a lot of empires fall.
Have I ever told you my theory? And I wish one of the options if I win the big lottery is to go and, come up with a thesis and just write a bunch of master's thesis and get a bunch of master's degrees and maybe PhDs, because I see these things like in Europe. Did I ever tell you my theory about why the wildlife there is so sparse everywhere I went in Europe? So it was amazing. And maybe people have had different experiences in Europe, but I doubt it. So if we have people that, go to Europe and spend some time there, I want you to look around, especially when you get into the woods and stuff. Because as y'all know, lived in Slovenia, Spent a lot of time in Croatia, Italy, Germany, Bavaria, all those places, and spent a lot of time out in nature because my wife and I like to, hike and walk the dogs in nature. We love to do that. And one thing I started to notice is, a lot of things are off in Europe. For an American, just a lot of things are off. And I would get kind of a creepy feeling. We had some woods and hills and mountains right behind our house. Like we walk, 300 meters and we're up in the wilderness, like not the wilderness, but the forest. And real hilly forest, lush green. It was a deciduous forest, if you will, like kind of it reminded me of, Pacific Northwest a little bit. But I would get the creeps kind of, and I couldn't quite, when you get the creeps, you don't know exactly, something's off. I'll tell you what was off. There weren't many birds. Never saw squirrels. Rarely saw squirrels. See a salamander from time to time. I saw deer like maybe 3 times the whole time I was there, and I went hunting twice. There's just not much wildlife there, man. And we'd go way out into the woods, to go hunting, which that's another story. How they hunt in Europe is sickening. But I was like, why is there no wildlife here? I mean, like down in Bavaria, down, in Croatia and stuff, it's just no wildlife, because even up here in Lubbock, dry ass Texas, there's deer that come into our yard, you see deer everywhere. You see armadillos, you see raccoons, possums, all this stuff in this dry, desolate area. Okay. So I have a theory on why there's very little wildlife, or the wildlife is not so prevalent in Europe. You go back to the Mongols, right? We talk about supply lines and things like that. The supply lines, dude, are just not what back then, not what they are now. You're talking about horseback, moving 3 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, tops, going from Mongolia all the way to, Ukraine. Dude, that's not a supply line. You have to live off the land as you go. You have to harvest what you can as you go. And how do you feed all your troops? You hunt, you gather, and that's how you feed your troops. There have been so many wars in Europe for 2,000 years. There's been wars in Europe where armies were moving north, south, east, west, living off the land, hunting that place out. And I think they permanently altered the ecosystem there when it comes to game that you can actually eat. We see salamanders all the time. Dude, nothing you can really eat. Dude, even birds. Like birds were hard. I mean, you'd be walking through the woods, you usually hear birds and stuff. Not over there, dude. You'd see them occasionally, but it's not like the US, man. And so one of two things. Either they hunted it all out, or the animals got smart and they moved extremely remote where humans hardly ever go. But whatever. What do you think about that?
So I've never thought about it because I've never really noticed it before. But I haven't spent the time in Europe that you have. But that makes sense, especially the especially the army and the wars piece. Because you're right. You think about all the wars that have taken place there, even in the 20th century. Dude, there was there wasn't a lot of supply there. There's plenty of documentation out there where units didn't have food, didn't have supplies. And I know from being a Joe that, okay, that's fine, we're gonna figure it out. I know bless his soul, Gerry Cole killed a cow on the runway at Baghdad International Airport with an AK-47. He shot it in the head, and then they cooked it. Right?
I never heard that story.
You never heard that story?
No. Tell that story.
Bro.
Tell that story while I
All
let
right.
my dogs in. I'm gonna listen.
All right. So Gerry was over. This was the invasion. This was the invasion of Iraq. So they got to the point to where, and everybody, again, well documented that 3rd Infantry Division and some of the lead elements outran their supply lines going to Baghdad because they were just moving so fast. And the orders were, don't stop, keep going to Baghdad, get to Baghdad, because the theory was that if you can get to Baghdad and you take Baghdad, the rest of the country will fall and without a fight. So they get up to Baghdad, and Gerry was 525 at the time, and they they were tired of MREs and they were running low on MREs. And one thing they were not running low on though were cows. And you saw them a lot when I was there, multiple times. You were there multiple times. You saw cows. It was not uncommon. And so Gerry, being from Luray, Virginia, from the mountains, Gerry goes, "Well, I have a solution to our food problem." And Gerry took like some interpreter or whoever, it might have been a source, I don't know. He got a hold of their AK because he didn't want to kill it with his M4 because he was like, I don't know what this 5.56 is going to do to this guy. He's like, we need this to be quick and clean. So Gerry shot this thing in the face, killed it, and then got an engineer to come over with his little, front end loader, and they chained that thing up, man, lifted it up, and Gerry skinned it, quartered it, and cut steaks out, and somebody fashioned a grill, and it was game on. The Marines that were with him loved him forever, man. They were
So
like,
Gerry
that
knew how
dude.
to slaughter a cow. He knew how to slaughter.
Yeah. Yep.
Dang, man.
He's a country boy from Luray, man.
Yeah.
He did that growing up.
Amazing.
And
So
so yeah. So I think all the wars depleting, edible animals. I think it's completely plausible.
yeah, for those of you, Josh, I think you bought a bottle somewhere, and you could write a name on it,
Yep.
and you can tell the details of that. But Josh wrote Chief Warrant Officer 3, Gerry Cole, and for those of you who don't know Gerry, we could talk about Gerry for a whole podcast, but I'm sure we have some listeners that haven't listened before. But Gerry's a good friend. He was a really good friend, salt of the earth kind of guy. He was one of those Yogi Berra types. He'd say something, and you're like, I've never heard it said that way before. And you think about it, you go back, maybe hours later, like, there's some wisdom there.
Yeah.
He would just say these things and do things. I still have almost every memory I have with Gerry is fond. But Gerry, had some demons, and one of his, I wouldn't say faults. How would you say it? He was just a big-hearted guy, dude. And when our group, we give each other a hard time. You should hear the stuff that me and Josh and Roger say to each other. It's brutal, you got to understand that comes from a place of love. But Gerry understood. But anytime we give him a hard time, like we all give each other a hard time, he would take it to heart, man. He would, like, a little part of him would die if you made fun of him a little bit. And he was just a big-hearted guy. He took everything. He put his heart into everything. And unfortunately, he dealt with some demons, had some situations, and he was, how many years has it been now? He was one of the 22 a day, took his own life. And it's one of the reasons we do this podcast. It's one of the reasons we wrote that book, is to make sure his memory doesn't die. I just love talking about it, man. I'll hear a story about Gerry killing a cow on a Baghdad runway that I never heard before. And yeah, it's been a while. I think the only one of us three who hasn't visited his grave. It's one of those things I don't want to do, Josh. I know I have to do it, but I don't want to. I get choked up just thinking about visiting his grave in Arlington.
Yeah. So this year, July 1st, it'll be 8 years. It'll be 8 years since he's gone. It's so I went, I finally made the trip, to visit his grave, and it was tough, man. It was tough, to the point where I had somebody, walk over and be like, "Hey, are you okay?" I was like, "No, I'm not." But so Gerry hit me up one day. I was in Afghanistan, and I was getting ready. I was a couple weeks out from rotating back home, and I was talking. I had called back for something, and Gerry was in the office. He's like, "Who's on that phone?" And they're like, "Oh man, it's not." He was like, "Give me that phone." And Jerry got on. He's like, "What's up, brother? What you doing? Blah blah." And I was like, "Oh man, just getting ready to." I forget who was replacing me. But I was like, "Man, just getting ready to do turnover beats, this, that, and the other stuff like that." He was like, "You're coming up on that Boko date," and I was like, "Jerry, what do you mean Boko date?" And Jerry goes, "You don't know about the Boko date?" He was like, "Is this your first deployment?" I was like, "No, MFR, it's not my first deployment." He was like, "Oh, you've been doing it wrong this whole time, haven't you?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so,
How are you going to
since this is
explain this in a PG
since yeah,
13?
exactly. I was about to say, since this is a family podcast, um, so Jerry proceeded to tell me what that Boko one was an acronym, and after a certain date, of once you're getting ready to come home, especially for the married guys, it's like,
Without womanly
hey,
companionship.
without you've been out in an austere environment and a womanly companionship, and you're getting ready to come home, and I mean, you want things in working order. You don't want it to be tired, right? And so
Oh my
that
God.
that 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 Boko was, it was everybody can figure out what the B is, but it was off cutoff date, right? So that was your Boko date. Now, after a certain day, it's like, hey, no matter how bad it gets, you can't touch it.
I
You
heard
can't
that from
leave it
him
alone.
the first time as well, and he told me it's 14
I-
days. That's the
yes,
first time I'd heard that, and it's like, well, it makes total sense, you
no,
know?
absolutely, it makes total sense. He was like, you don't want to have a misfire or anything like that. Things got to be ready to go. And
So
I laughed. I laughed for like an hour after, and then I went and told everybody. I was like, "Do you know what a Boko date is?" And a bunch of people were like, "What is that?" And then when I told them, they're like, "Oh shit, that actually makes sense." And that goes
yeah,
back to what you were saying about Jerry's little pearls of wisdom that you don't realize until later. You're like, "Oh shit, he was actually teaching me something legit."
one of the things he
So
said to me one time, I don't know if you ever heard this, but when I heard it, I was just like, I actually froze in place because it threw me off so much. So in place of the holiest of holy word of all words, the F word, like the
yep,
Christmas story, I'm gonna say the word screw, right? And Jerry was doing something with a radio one time, and he was royally screwing it up. I'm like, Jerry, let me get in there. Let me get in there. You know how the radios were. I was like, Jerry, let me get in there. Let me get in there and help you out with that. And he gets really frustrated with me, and he turns around and he yells, "I'm screwing this chicken. You just hold the feathers." And I froze in place. I'm like, okay, I didn't know you could use those words in that combination in the English language. What does it mean? But it got me to stop. It got me to stop, and it got
yep.
me to, got him some time to figure it out. I've never heard that before. If anyone's ever heard that, "I'm screwing this chicken, you just hold the feathers," I don't even know how that comes into somebody's mind.
Yeah, I never heard that, dude. But Jerry got in my dude. He chewed me out one time, and Jerry was one of those guys. Like I've had plenty of people tell me that I messed something up or I did something wrong and stuff like that. And I would say a majority of those people, I was just like, okay, whatever, and I just brushed it off, and it did not bother me one iota. Jerry, I mean, he got my ass pretty good, and it was completely my fault. I was supposed to be at the office to haul like 4 or 5 people to the airport, so that nobody had to park there. And I overslept. I woke up. You know how
That's
you
not
wake
like
up?
you. That's not like you to
No,
oversleep, dude.
no. And so what's funny? You know how you wake up, and it was like being a private, and you wake up and you miss PT formation, and you just know as soon as your eyes open, you're like, oh, I mean, I've messed up. As soon as I woke up, I realized what I had done. I was like, oh crap. I got into the office, and Jerry was walking down the hallway, and at the time he was my team leader, and he looked at me. He goes, you got an ass chewing coming, right? I was like, yep, got it. Yep, completely on me. And dude, he got my ass, and afterwards, I felt like the worst human being on earth because I let Jerry down. And I was just like, and I went and told him, I said, hey man, I said, look, I said, again, I apologize. That won't happen again. Like, I feel terrible, blah, blah. And it was funny because like an hour later he came, he was like, hey man, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I didn't mean to yell at you. I was like, no, I was like, don't say that.
Don't do that.
But that's Gerry. Gerry would do the right thing like that and get it, get on to somebody, and then he feel bad about it. He'd be like, man, I'm sorry. I was like, no. I was like, don't be sorry. I was like, I deserved it. I was like, it was completely like, dude, I was a, I'm a senior NCO. Like, it's just like, it was completely uncalled for. I deserved it. Don't be sorry you yelled at me. I was like, I needed it. And he'd be like, oh man, oh shut. You know how
Oh
he
man.
was. And
Yeah. That just goes to show you, man. I don't want to get too angry because Josh and I and Roger and those of you, some of you in the audience understand audience. I say audience like we got this huge Joe Rogan size audience, but some people who listen understand the level of anger that we have, and maybe it's misplaced. I don't think so, but the stages of grief with Gerry, I still feel that anger phase, that anger stage. And I guess what I learned from that and how that was handled, maybe a contributing factor of what led him down that road was if you think you're doing someone a favor when they're having problems by sheltering them and not getting the word out and not getting every resource available, you think you're doing them a favor, but you're not. You got to address that problem, not problem. You got to address that issue straight on. And, since then I've been in a couple of situations where it's like, dude, this is all hands on deck. This is not, I'm going to do everything I can so that I won't repeat the mistake that others made on that path that Gerry took, and I'm probably not explaining it right because I don't want to call anybody out. Not that they would listen anyway, but I just think it was handled all wrong. And I try to get over the anger and be like, okay, just get over it and don't make that same mistake. If somebody's hurting, you may not be doing them any favors by addressing it right then, but they might still be alive also, instead of putting them in a worse situation, going down a whole other road. I don't know. Those of you who don't know what we're talking about at Miss Spacey, maybe Josh can suss it out a little bit for everyone who doesn't know Gerry, doesn't know the situation. We don't want to lay it all out there, but it is a serious thing. I think most of us have dealt with the situations like this.
yeah, Gerry was one of those guys that if you call Gerry at 3:00 in the morning and you're like, hey brother, I'm in a bad spot. I'm on the side of the road. I'm 387 miles away from you, but you're the only one that's answered the phone. Gerry would get in his car and he would drive to help you, to his own detriment. Like, dude, Gerry would be like, "Oh, there's a hurricane outside my house right now. I'm good. I'm going." Right, and he would not. Gerry would give you the shirt off his back, in a blizzard, without hesitation. And Gerry did that a lot to his own detriment. And then once he was in a hole, and instead of people saying, hey man, I need you to stop. One, I need you to stop digging. Two, I'm going to stop asking you to help me take care of my problems because you have your hands full, right? Your cup has runneth over. But yet there were certain people who continued to ask of Gerry to do things for the greater good, knowing full well what type of person Gerry was, knowing full well that, Gerry was never going to tell you no. Gerry would just continue to take things on his plate until he was, until he's overcome by events, and overcome by that. And, to me, that's taking advantage of someone. And Gerry got taken advantage of by people who should have known better. And, had they taken a different path, Gerry probably would still be alive today. I think, and I agree with you. I every time every time I think about him, every time I think about how how it all happened and everything, I'm the same way. It makes me angry because I think about his two sons, who should still have their dad, still have their dad around. Yeah, it gets me every single time that I think about it. So the bottle that you mentioned earlier, so uh, a guy named Brad Holling. A lot of folks may have not heard of him, but you've heard of Shoegarten Gordon and you've heard of Black Hawk Down. So Brad Holling is a former Delta operator. He was in the Battle of Mogadishu, Battle of the Black Sea. He was the third sniper on Super 6-4 that had Shugart and Gordon on it. And when they inserted Shugart and Gordon, Brad stayed on the bird. Well, we all know what happened with Shugart and Gordon. That bird was hit by an RPG. Brad lost his leg, one of his legs to it. But then he came back and Brad stayed on active duty. He still, like, this guy was doing halo jumps and everything. He was one of the first ones to do it with a prosthetic leg, and everything. The guy is the guy's a badass. Well, he opened up a distillery, and the distillery is called Beehawk, and one of his bourbon line is called Sergeant's Valor. And it's a throwback to correction, Super 6-2. I'm sorry, not Super 6-4, Super 6-2. But the bottle is it's a throwback to one of the NCOs that Brad was very close to. And the distillery has a room. It is very well done in honoring, some former soft guys who made the ultimate sacrifice. And so, but one of the things that Brad, is very big on, especially with his bourbon and with his distillery, is the camaraderie and, everything that comes with sitting down and sharing a glass of whiskey with somebody else. And on the back of the bottle, he left a blank space to where you could write names in. It says, in honor of, and that way you can dedicate that bottle to whoever you want to, right? You write in the name, and that way every time you pick that bottle up to have a drink, you're doing it in honor of the name on the back of it, which I thought was just an incredibly classy thing, and just a great thing that that Brad and his wife Jess Holling did. The distillery is in Southern Pines, North Carolina. It's called Beehawk. Go online, take a look at it. We joined Club 62, and they do special events if you're in the club and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was the first. Gerry's was the first name I thought of when I grabbed it from the store, and to throw on there.
My mom's out there saying, Josh, why would you ever write someone's name that you honor on a bottle of that demon alcohol? But we just roll different.
Has she been talking to my mom? Because my mom would say the same thing.
So I'm going to plug this again because no one's bought it in a while. But that book that Josh and I put together under AJ Todd, Bucky Calhoun, Snafus, Food Bars, and Other Sordid Tales. We don't make any money off this book. It did pretty good for a while. It's just a bunch of war stories that we put together. Some of them humorous, some of them pretty bone chilling, and some of them just our thoughts on things. So yeah, look it up on Amazon. AJ Todd, Bucky Calhoun. All that goes to All Secure Foundation, who they cater to folks in need. But then I'll follow that up with a book my dad got me, which here's the proof in the pudding, Josh.
I love it.
A book by Stephen Pressfield that basically nobody wants to read your SHIT. Stuff. Nobody wants to read your stuff. So yeah, I don't fault anyone who doesn't order the book because no one wants to read it anyway.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed writing the book. It was cathartic, and at the end of the day, my kids are going to have something. My grandkids will have something to, just pick up and say, "Hey, man, this is my granddad. He was a crazy old coot, who sat by the fire and told all these crazy stories and sounded like a crazy person and drank his bourbon. They'll have that, and then hours of me rambling on here. So no, man, we should stop talking about writing another one and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple guys. My buddy John Tipton. I'll go ahead and say his last name because he's got a podcast out there. Don't go listen to it. Only listen to it after you listen to this. But he reached out to me. I've known this guy since high school, and he was a former Army, all this stuff. He chased pirates, off the coast of Somalia back in the day. But he said he'd be more than willing to contribute to that. I think some pirate chasing stories would be fun. Roger's got some. I don't know. When Roger's not with us, in case y'all haven't noticed.
They're not letting Roger talk at all.
But yeah, we should put one together. I got a few in the tank. I hate to say all the good ones, but you forget so many stories. You could tell the one about Gerry, shooting the cow. It doesn't necessarily have to be about us,
That's true.
But yeah, we should put something else together because I just I think there's been talk about a memorial for the GWAT, and that's cool, but I already feel it fading away, it's just fading away into memory. The whole Afghanistan, Iraq thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, man. And not that I don't want it to fade away. Maybe it's a good thing it's fading away. But like you said, we're turning into the old crazy veterans who have PTSD and were, dumb because they fought for 20 years in Afghanistan and the botched, not nonsense in Iraq. It's kind of weird to see, time passing us by a little bit, the history passed us by. Because that's a faded memory. With as fast as time moves now, I mean, people don't, it's not that it's strange. We went from 2004, you'd write a letter to Oakley, send your broken Oakleys that you broke on a mission or something, and Oakley would send you like 10 pairs of their, the new model that's not even out and say, hey, pass them out to your friends, we support the troops and stuff. And it wasn't just Oakley. That happened to me one time. And I was like, whoa, I'll just want it. They sent us like 10 pairs of their stuff that was in development. It was just, wow. And we've just come a long way from that, I'm not bitter about it. It's just interesting to watch.
Hey, man, those support the troop magnets, those yellow ribbons support the troop magnet. Those things are faded and cracked now. They are really faded and cracked these days. Nobody's I remember coming back when I was with Big Army, coming back from Iraq on my leave, and you're transiting airports, on the way home, and I'm in ACUs, I'm in grandma's couch camo, and dude, I could not buy a meal. I could not buy a meal on the way home or on the way, on the way back to the box, man. Every time I walk into, a store, some place to eat in the airport, like somebody was like, hey man, I got his, and I would protest, stuff like that. Dude, now I see, I call them kids, they're adults, I see young kids in uniform walk past people. Dude, nobody even pays them a second mind, man. I generally, whenever I see one, I try and, especially if they're getting ready to sit down and eat something like that, I'm like, hey, I got your food.
You do that?
Yeah, for the younger ones. I don't do it for the older ones.
Okay.
For the younger ones, because I think for the younger ones, it's the older ones, they probably already had it done for them at some point in their career, but the younger ones, just God, man, especially with recruiting numbers the way they're at. The younger ones need to know that there's at least some people out there that that still care. I don't tell them I don't tell them I'm a vet or anything like that. It's just, hey man, I appreciate your service, thanks for let me get that for you.
So,
but it's
y'all know I live in Lubbock, Texas, and big Texas Tech thing. My daughter went to Army ROTC at Texas Tech, and out here, I don't know how it is where you are, Josh, and out there in Arizona, but here we have tea places where you go get iced tea, and they're really some of these places are pretty cool, like it's like 31 flavors, but tea, sweet or
Like
unsweet.
boba tea or some shit?
No,
You call it?
like iced tea, like just regular
Oh,
iced
okay.
tea, like flavor like peach tea or
Yeah.
whatever, watermelon, all this stuff. And that's where we get our water, because water here sucks, dude. I'll drink out of the tap if I have to, but it's just whatever. So we're always going to this tea place. It's called HTO. And I was getting some water the other day, filling up our 3 gallons, and these 3 young ladies walk in, and they obviously are cadets. They're Air Force cadets, ROTC. And I'm the old creepy dude, I guess, who is just like, they're sitting there, and I was like, hey, I think I asked them, so what? I can't remember. I didn't say branch. I said something like, oh shoot, I can't remember what I said. But basically, what's your MOS going to be? Because I know Air Force is different. It's like, so what's your I didn't say branch. I can't remember what I said. But anyway, they looked at me like I had, rats crawling out of my ears, and they go, "We're in the Air Force." I was like, I understand that you're ROTC. So what did you select on your order of merit list for what your job is going to be? And they said again, well, we're in the Air Force. I'm like, yeah, but don't you have an order of merit list? Did you select your job, like what you want to do? And all 3 of them at the same time go, oh, yeah. One girl said, oh, I'm going intelligence. I would like to get intelligence. I said, good luck with that. I was being whatever. And the other one wants to be a pilot. And I was like, good luck with that. The other one's like, I want to be air crew. And I was like, I think you might get that one. But anyway, it's good to see kids still going through. I know how y'all feel about that, but for me, it's good to see kids still going through, because these 3 young ladies were, they're in shape. They seem to have their stuff together. Their uniforms are squared away. And it's like, well, at least there's still, at least there's still some people coming in who might show some promise, because, oh, dude, at the end of the day, it's a shield. It is a shield. It's a weakening shield, but we still need it. We still need a powerful military. And now that Biden came out with a $7.3 trillion budget that includes a cut in defense, wow. But did you hear, you were talking about Social Security today, and Ben Shapiro, let's talk about this. So we're talking about Social Security with me, you, and Roger. Needs to be cut. I agree. It never will be. But Ben Shapiro went off, and he really divided conservative Twitter today by saying, he said, first of all, the age of retirement needs to be raised, which I agree with. He also said retiring at 65 is just dumb. And I was like, whew. And a lot of people got upset about that. And a lot of people were like, well, they made the typical arguments. And I guarantee this will take us to 2 hours right here. But I agree, because back when Social Security was founded, do you know what the life expectancy was when Social Security was founded?
It was like late 60s, right? Early.
No, it was 64. The average life expectancy in the U.S. was 64. You need Social Security until you're 65. So back then it was a good deal. Like I work out at a gym here, Josh, that it's not where a lot of teenagers would like to work out, because there's a lot of old people in there. And the only young people under the age of 40 are in there to actually work out. There are very little mirrors in this gym, so people aren't like checking themselves out. They're there to work out. My point is, there's a lot of older folks that work out there. When I say older folks, in their 60s, these people are in good shape. They're working out. 64 today, 65 is not what it was when FDR was in office. Josh, I know you talk about, I want to retire, I want to do all this, I want to, live out in a house, but I guarantee you won't do nothing. I promise you won't do nothing. You won't let all that stuff in your head go to waste. You are going to continue to contribute. You're going to continue to contribute to the economy. You're not just going to sit there and collect the checks that you've earned, right? I promise you that's going to happen. Even though you deny it, I'm telling you, you're not going to retire. You're not going to do it. That's what Ben Shapiro was getting at, but that really divided Twitter today. There's a lot of discussion about this.
So Yeah, so there's like you said, man, there's a lot to unpack there. I didn't see. I wasn't on Twitter today. Uh, I was working working today. Definitely didn't retire today. The so one, you're correct. Like even after I retire, I'm still gonna do stuff. I have, you know, I'm still going. I have no problem consulting. After I retire. When I say I'm retiring, that means I'm not getting up on Monday morning and checking my emails by 8 o'clock, right? And I'm not like, oh man, okay, let me see how much, let me see when I can take that vacation this year because I have, this play, I have this meeting I got to be at or whatever, right? I'm not going to have a Monday through Friday, work schedule. I'm not going to be filling out a time card, anything like that. Like I will be a capacity of I am more than happy to come consult. I'm more than happy to come help you with your problem and fix your problem. And oh, by the way, here's my rate. If you want me to do so. Like that, I have no problem doing that. I have no problem doing that till the day I die. But that will be, it's like the US and their response to, military is like we will respond at a place and time of our choosing. That will be my work, after I retire. Um, you know, should the retirement age be moved up? I think so. But it's like when the military decided to change their retirement system, you have to start that. You just can't move the goalpost on somebody when they're 61 and say, okay, well, hey, buddy, I know you're planning on 65. Now it's 68,
No, it'd
right?
be retroactive. It would have to be
Yeah, yeah,
retroactive.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's gotta be
Yeah.
retroactive. I have no problem with moving the retirement age up. I think again, you're right. I think it should be because you said when FDR signed this into law or got this signed into law, it was the average age was like 64. The average life expectancy in the United States now is 77 or 78.
I think it's
Um,
78.
Okay. Yeah. So, hey, people are living longer. Social Security and Medicaid the biggest driver of the national debt.
Dude, it was not designed. I'm gonna have you keep going, but I just want to
Yeah,
throw
yeah.
this in here. It was not designed to pay people out for 20 years, obviously.
No,
When the life
no.
expectancy is 64, you're looking at paying 5 years max. Now, like my parents draw Social Security, which they're hey, not casting stones. They paid into it, but at the same time, I'm gonna throw it right back to you. I swear to God. But they're gonna live for a while. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna be around for a while, and the system just was not designed that way. It wasn't.
No, you're absolutely that's a great point. You're absolutely right. It was not designed that way. You most of the people, well, I won't say most of the people, some of the people in my family, have lived well into their late 80s, well into their early 90s, and some of them took Social Security early, right? So they took it at like 62. So they're literally taking like plus 20 years. You say 20 years, like they're taking 20 plus. Um, Social Security on itself, right? Okay, so Social Security, Medicaid benefit, these are biggest drivers of our debt. Uh, and when you take a look at what you pay into Social Security, all right, what is taken out of your pay for Social Security versus what you are paid back, even if you wait until I think it's 67, if you wait until what is it, 66, 67, you get the full amount. As opposed to, the earlier you take it when you become eligible, the less you get. So if you wait until the last possible moment where I think you're forced onto it, you get the maximum amount. You could live for another 20 years, at that amount, you will not get back what you paid into it throughout your, working career. Not even remotely close. You are giving the government an interest-free loan that you are not getting back. Right? They're not paying you back. They're paying you back a little bit, but not all. What should happen is when you turn, let's say, you turn 16, you turn 18. All right, you turn 18, you have a choice. You can either pay into Social Security or you get the choice. You can invest your own that money into whatever investment vehicle you want. But if you do that, hey man, when you retire, you're on your own. That's it. You get to pick those two paths, and that's it. It's like it's like the military moved to that blended retirement system. All right, hey, you know, so choose your own adventure, uh, and you go with it. But Social Security, it will never get changed. And you and Roger are 100% right, and I know this. It will never get changed because any politician who mentions we should look at Social Security automatically vilified. Like they are automatically vilified, drunk through the coals, and it's like it's automatic. Oh, hey, old people, they're this party is trying to take your Social Security away. You're going to be
Yeah.
living in the streets. Um, so
I think
it's a terrible system. It's a
I
terrible
think
system.
the one that was vilified, the first, well, maybe not the first president, but the one in my memory that actually proposed it was George W. Bush. And I think it was before 9/11,
Yep.
where he proposed a change to Social Security to move to a system wherein it's more like a thrift savings plan. It's more like a 401k, right? Where
Yeah.
your name is attached to it, and you're as long as you're working, you're constantly paying in. The government's going to match your contribution. Nobody really loses anything out of that because when it comes to that stuff, the government's still going to borrow against the money you have in there. That's how banking and finance works, but at least I don't know. I think that's a much better system. Look, man, my libertarian side of me does not want to do this, but I'm going to take umbrage a little bit at part of what you said. I think that I agree with you. My libertarian side, it's like you have a choice. You can either not do anything or you're on your own. But I do know how our government works is that anybody who does that and winds up with nothing is still going to be on some kind of teat, right? In a perfect world, that would not be the case. And they die starving in the streets. But no one has a choice. No one has a choice. You're going into this mandatory TSP thing, and you can go online and you can look at your own TSP and maybe you can make certain elections, and you can choose your own fate with that. You can put it on the G fund or the L fund or whatever, that opens up a lot of doors. But, maybe people will get, now that they got some skin in the game. Oh, this is my money now. This is not just money I'm paying into the federal system where it's all a big bucket and I'm going to get it back. No, you can actually invest your money. You can play with your account a little bit, a little bit, with
Yeah.
the matching funds and everything. It's just, but again, like you said, I mean, George Bush, his poll numbers went way down when he started proposing that. But the problem I have with you and Roger, and I think we would go fisticuffs, and maybe you and I will on this, is that I think I don't want to reveal too much, but in the conversations we had, it's like, yeah, get rid of it as long as I get my money. Well, dude, that's not your money, dude. I'm paying, the Social Security that I'm paying now is supporting my parents, and the Social Security that my daughter is paying now is actually supporting my parents. We're not paying in for ourselves. So somebody is going to have to take it on the chin on this one. Like if we're talking perfect world, let's just get rid of it. If we get rid of it tomorrow, it's like Social Security's gone. It's gone. We can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable. I hope you have some money in savings because this program is gone. We're going to redesign it. Dude, you ain't getting any money because you're not paying in for yourself.
That's
I've
true.
heard
Yeah.
I've heard some estimates saying that our great great grandchildren, you and I and Roger, our great great grandchildren are now paying for our Social Security because that's a speculation on it. It's that insolvent. Yeah, it's just dude. FDR, one of the worst presidents ever, man. Worst president, one of top 10 worst. Top 10 worst.
The damage that FDR did to this country with the New Deal cannot be overstated. It absolutely cannot be overstated. And Hoover tried to warn us. Hoover absolutely tried to warn us. And then FDR turned around and then he got elected to 3 terms. Right? FDR was the president that afterwards, when we amended the Constitution, it was like, okay, like 2 terms, that's it. You know, it is absolutely, I mean, Not even mentioning, the Americans of Japanese descent getting, put into internment camps. But again, it's the Republicans, it's the GOP who would put people in camps, as opposed to the Democrats who have literally done it. Um,
Have literally
there's
put people in chains
yes, exactly.
and wanted
Mitt
to
Romney
keep
is
them there.
yes, Mitt Romney never put anybody in chains, but the Democrats have. It's wild. Something has to be. I hate to say something has to be done. Social Security has to be addressed, though. It is not sustainable, and it goes back to one of those. It's like bailing out the banks in 2008, 2009. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you can put a band-aid on it if you want to, but it's going to come back. Those chickens are coming home to roost at some point, and Social Security. You can continue down the road that you're on, but those chickens are going to come home to roost at some point as well.
What if the rubber met the road, and things got really bad, which things might get really bad with the national debt going away. Things might get really bad. They could get really bad really quick. I'm hoping that AI kind of saves us from this. I'm hoping that AI and this AI revolution, man, Josh is yawning like a son of a gun. I'm telling you, it is past his bedtime, folks. But I'm hoping the AI thing is going to be, the next, tech boom in the economy. I'm really hoping that. But let's say, Josh, let me back up here. Let's say that the rubber met the road and it's like, okay, we're going to have to make some sacrifices here. What if, the federal government came out and said, hey, Gen Xers, y'all live pretty good. You're not going to get Social Security to save your kids Social Security. Now, before you answer, I'll tell you how I would feel about that. Truthfully, dude, I don't count on Social Security. I don't. When I'm looking at what it's going to look like when I'm in my late 60s and 70s, I'm not counting on it. I'm not counting on that $600, how much ever it's going to be a month. I'm not. I don't figure that in my equation, which makes things kind of a little bit tighter. But would you be willing to give that up? Like if it's like, okay, we're going to do away with this, Gen X, I'm sorry, you're not getting anything, but we're going to design a new program. Your kids are going to start paying into a 401k and maybe they'll be okay. But you've got to give up yours. Would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Not just for your kids, but for the next couple generations. You would.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like you, when we run our numbers and stuff, we don't look at Social Security. We don't count on Social Security. We don't factor that in. We only factor in, our investments and, what retirements and stuff we have. That's it. We don't factor Social Security in at all.
Yeah. It's, that's gravy money. That's gravy money. For
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Anything outside of, what we have as far as, retirements and investments. That's all. Hey man, that's free chicken.
Free
but we
chicken.
certainly
There
don't
you go.
count on it. It's funny we're talking chickens coming home to roost, rubber meeting the road, free chicken. A lot of sayings that we throw out, and
Oh, here we go.
I know some of them I heard picked up from my the chicken coming home to roost. Man, that was one of my grandmother's sayings. She said it all the time. Those chickens are coming home to roost, Bobby Boucher, and so. But have you ever thought about like the origin of them? Like, how did they get started? I don't know. So I was thinking about some of them because one of my favorite ones is crossing the Rubicon, and so I got to thinking. It was like, okay, we were talking. I was like, man, it's like, I think we crossed a Rubicon on this, and I think I may have said it on the podcast a time or two. And every once in a while, I'll say something to my kids, and my kids give me that look like, oh, here we go. And so I'll say, well, this good. And then if you remember in Lincoln, where Lincoln gets ready, he's going to tell a story. And the guy's like, oh, no, he's going to tell a story. I can't take this. So my kids do. And then they leave the room. So, but I'm going to tell a story real quick. So crossing the Rubicon, where it came from in the, the late Roman Republic, the Rubicon is a river, and it marked the boundary between um, Gaul and basically Italy proper. All right, and so at the time, the governors of Roman provinces were appointed as pro-magistrates with imperium. All right, and imperium meaning the right to command. Uh, and so the governors basically served as generals for any Roman army, like a legion that came into their province. Then it became the governor, became the commander with whatever legion was in their territory at the time. And Roman law specified that only elected magistrates could hold imperium within Italy. Okay, so any magistrate who entered Italy at the head of his troops forfeited his imperium, and was not legally allowed to command troops. So after Caesar got done with his conquest in Gaul, he was having some issues. The Roman Empire was having some issues by this point. And he got to the Rubicon River, and he knew that if he crossed the Rubicon in command of his army, that it was a capital offense. All right, and his soldiers, his legionnaires, they knew that obeying the order to cross the Rubicon was a capital offense for them. And so, it's said that, when Caesar went ahead and made the decision to cross the Rubicon, he knew there was no turning back. And he, is rumored to have said the die is cast. Um, and so that was it. That was, and so we never say, hey man, we crossed the Rubicon on this. That's, it means there is no turning back. This is it. The path is set, the die is cast. So if you didn't know where crossing the Rubicon came from, now you do, and you can say you learned at least one thing by listening to C3.
That and the Berserker thing. But the Italians, because the die is cast thing, that that goes all the way back to the Latin, right? And the crossing the Rubicon, whatever. Yeah, but the Italians, they contributed a lot of. I'm obsessed with etymology. I really am. Like, where did that word come from? It's kind of crazy. And the Oxford English Dictionary, the real one, is actually 26 books, like 26 thick books, the OED, which tells you the etymology of every word in the English language. The real OED. The whole set cost something like $12,000 or something. If I was rich, I would definitely have an OED in my library. But a couple of, like, we're talking about the Italians and, Romans obviously are Italians, but I was reading a couple of these things. Josh proposed this, that we, look up sayings and stuff. I was trying to look up sayings. I couldn't find any. I couldn't find any. All I was finding was like colloquialisms and idioms and stuff like that, where nobody knows where it came from. We were talking about Yogi Berra and like, it ain't over till it's over kind of thing. Well, that's easy. That was just Yogi Berra that said it. I'm screwing this chicken. You just hold the feathers. Well, that came from Jerry Cole, I mean, but, I was looking at like 2 Italian words and, now coming out of a pandemic and everything, I didn't realize that malaria, actually, that came from late Rome when they were starting to adopt, actually, it was going from Latin into modern Italian or mid Italian, whatever you call it. But malaria back in the day, they didn't know what caused it. But it would happen like in the spring and the summer when the marshes around Rome would start to fill up with water. And when marshes, if you've ever been around a marsh, it stinks. It smells really bad. So when it would start to smell bad and people were coming down with this fever and, people were dying, they thought it was the actual air that was causing it. So the Italian/Latin word for bad was mal, and the Latin word for air was aria. So malaria, right? Malaria. They thought it was the air that was causing that, not the mosquitoes that were breeding in the damn marsh. So it's strange, like quarantine. That's another one. That was so crazy. The term quarantine originated during the Black Death. So when the Romans, well, not the Romans, this was like when Venice was a big empire, the Venetian Empire and all that stuff. They were controlling the whole Adriatic, the whole trade going into Europe up through the Adriatic. The Black Death hit around 1377 and wiped out 30% of Europe's population. So they had to start doing the COVID thing with ships coming into port. And what I learned was this all started in Dubrovnik, Croatia, which was a huge port city back in the day. So what they decided to do was, okay, this Black Death, the symptoms, they started to figure this out because it wasn't like COVID. This stuff was going on for years. They're like, somebody can be infected with it. We know they were infected. It takes about 15 to 20 days, maybe even 30, for them to start showing symptoms. So when a ship would dock in Dubrovnik, they would say, okay, you've got 40 days, which in the Italian is 40 giorni. 40 giorni. So the people that didn't speak Italian, you hear that word. It's like, well, he's got 40 giorni, quarantine, English speakers down there, German speakers, all that stuff. That's where quarantine came from, was Dubrovnik. The Italians, the Venetians were controlling. Okay, you cannot get off the ship for 40 days. Once you dock, we're going to see who starts showing symptoms. And those who do, the whole ship is, you're going back the way you came. It's like malaria and quarantine. It's amazing where these words come from, right? It's boring, but I think it's amazing. Y'all go F yourselves. I think it's interesting. and it's our podcast. So we can talk about what we want to talk about. When are we going to talk about when are we going to talk about white liberals and crocodiles?
Well, I was just about to, say, talk about reading the Riot Act, but you just read the Riot Act.
No.
By telling people to go F themselves. To say,
tell us about the Riot Act. This is
so you could, so when we talk about reading someone the Riot Act, talk about, like, you're reprimanding somebody, you're scolding them, or whatever, you're getting on to them, but what it was in England, and I'm paraphrasing and summarizing here, was there was an actual riot act that you couldn't have more than, I think it was like 3 people. It was instituted in 1715. Yeah, it was in Brits. It gave them the authority to label any group of more than 12 people, a threat to the peace. In these circumstances, a public official will read a small portion of the Riot Act and order the people to, disperse peacefully and depart the area. Anyone that remained an hour later was subject to arrest or removal by force. The law was, later put to the test in 1819 during the Peterloo Massacre, which they used the military to attack a large group of protesters after they basically ignored the Riot Act. So when you're reading somebody the Riot Act, you're getting on to them. You're telling them to stop what they're doing. You're trying to dissuade bad behavior. So that's the Riot Act. Luke just read it to you a little bit. Told you to go F yourselves because you don't like his etymology, which is actually pretty fascinating. I learned something new. So now he's going to read you the Riot Act, or he's going to read liberal white women, the Riot Act here.
I haven't completely formulated this this theory, but it hit me. The other night I was, drive back and forth to the gym. That's the longest drive I make. Make it, 4 or 5 times a week. I got like a good solid. My wife doesn't understand why we don't go to the gym together, because she goes there to, teach her classes and do her, do her therapy with people. And sometimes the problem is she stays longer than I do. So it's like, whatever, let's take separate cars. She gets upset about that because we need to ride together. But that, probably 45 minutes to an hour that I spend every day, that's when I get caught up on my podcast. That's when I get, my alone time and everything. And I was listening to Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil. And man, Dr. Phil is no joke. Everybody laughs at Dr. Phil, but man, the guy has some really good things to say. But they were talking about, certain things, race relations and whatever, crime in certain areas. And I had this thought, based kind of, it was a derivative thought of what they were saying. But I was like, it all kind of made sense to me all of a sudden. Because Joe Rogan likes wild animals, he likes watching the wild animal videos, zebras, getting mauled by lions and stuff, and crocodiles eating human beings. And I started to think about all the problems in the world: Haiti, Rwanda, St. Louis, Philadelphia. We see these things on the news. And what really struck me was there was a video that came out. Maybe some of the audience has seen it. It was in St. Louis, and there was a couple of high school students, and basically they were in a fight, and this black female took down this white girl and bashed her head into the concrete. And that girl's probably not going to make it. The girl whose head was bashed in. I was thinking to myself, if the races were reversed, it'd be a different story. I get it. And I started thinking about liberal white people, living in the suburbs, because a lot of liberal white people are living in places like North Dallas and Edina, Minneapolis, just outside of Minneapolis, these rich neighborhoods that are totally cloistered off from reality. And I think that a lot of liberal white people are totally cloistered off from reality. I think that liberal white people are some of the racist people on earth because they don't see human beings as they are. I think that the listeners of this podcast, Josh and I and Roger, not everyone who listens to this has traveled the world. But I would say the majority of the people that listen to this are conservative. And I would say, as a general rule, conservatives kind of understand human nature better than liberals. It's one of the reasons we don't believe in, welfare programs, because we read the sign on the beach in Costa Rica saying, "Don't feed the lizards. They'll forget how to provide for themselves." We think, I believe, that we understand human nature to a point where, teach a man to fish kind of thing. Give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish. That's how we approach life. That's how people of our mindset approach life. You don't have to get out into the world to understand how brutal human beings can be. How if you succumb to your human nature, or not to your animal nature of being, provided for, it's a bad path. So getting back to the liberal white people who live out in the suburbs, who have been cloistered off and never lived real life and don't understand the true nature of, the human experience. I believe that I'm starting to believe that when liberal white people, and it's real easy to say liberal white women, because I believe these liberal white women are very strong personalities, are controlling their husbands. That's what I believe. But when they see these videos of violence in Rwanda, violence in Haiti, violence in Philadelphia, maybe they live in a nice little suburb just outside of Philadelphia. Maybe they live in a nice little suburb, or maybe even downtown St. Louis, but they see all this stuff going on in St. Louis and predominantly black crime. I think they see it like you and I would watch maybe a crazy video on the internet of a crocodile eating a human being. Like, you got a little too close to the water, the crocodile popped out and ate the human being. A lion attacks a human being, right? You following me?
Yep.
Josh is asleep. No. They see it. This is how racist they are. You and I see that, Josh and Roger, and I think the majority of the audience, we see that as a human being attacking another human being. I think the liberal white person sees that as an animal attacking another human being. Well, the animal just doesn't know any better. That's just the state of nature for where they are. Now, the thing is, the reason they have this mindset is because they know the crocodile will never be in their neighborhood. They know the lion will never be in their neighborhood. They do not live in that world. They see the crime. They see these things and they say, well, that's not me. And this goes back to the whole, why do human beings feel sorry for dogs? Like in, John Wick, why did the dog getting killed affect you more than the 87 human beings that were killed? Because it's an animal. It's defenseless. It can't help itself. I think there's a correlation there, man. I really do. And I think it's a testament to how truly racist they are. They see them as animals. And I bet you anything, dude. I bet you if you started a business catering to liberal whites, where you would take armored vehicles and you could take them on a tour of the worst areas of St. Louis, the worst areas of DC. People would pay to see it, liberal people, the same way they would pay for a safari in Africa to see lions and shit, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous, but that's not me. That's not my life. I'm telling you, they do not live in reality. They see blacks, Hispanics, what's going on at the border, Haiti, Rwanda. They see it as a state of nature, an animal, not the same as they are. I'm telling you, I think I'm onto something here, man. I really think I'm onto something. What do you think? You're looking at me skeptically.
No, I think you're spot on. Who was it? Was it Nancy Pelosi that, when they were talking about shutting down the border and stuff like that, or it wasn't Pelosi, it was one of the others, but she was white, a white female Democrat. It was like, well, then who's going to pick our vegetables? Or so, something akin to that. And you're like, holy cow. Like that's the first thought that comes to your head when we say we're going to shut down the border, and keep illegal aliens out. That's the first thought, is who's going to pick your vegetables and clean your house. Wow.
Well, I passed this by a couple of people. You wouldn't pick up the phone. I don't know why. Watching a movie with your dad or something. But I called Roger, and this is one of those things. Maybe I didn't lay it out just right, but the way I laid it out to Roger, he's like, well, yeah, of course. Of course, that's the way it is. And I laid it out to a friend of mine. She listens occasionally. She is a Kuwaiti Palestinian who immigrated to the U.S. during the Troubles. You remember back in the day when the Kuwaitis kicked out everyone?
Yeah.
Her dad was fairly successful in Kuwait. They moved to the United States. So she is a minority, a double minority. She's an Arab Palestinian, but this is one of the most conservative women I've ever met in my life, actually. And I laid this out to her, and she was like, absolutely. She's like, I want you to say this on the podcast. In my experience, liberal white women are the most racist people on the planet because they see me as a token. They totally see me as a token. And as soon as they find out I'm conservative, they don't want anything to do with me. They want me to be by their side so they can show all their friends that they've got a friend, who's intersectional. But the minute I don't agree with them, they cast me to the side, and it's just like, it's nothing. She's like, conservative white women, she lived in Amarillo for a while. She grew up in California, Southern California. And then she moved to Colorado. So she lived in those two places. Then she moved to Amarillo and worked. And she learned, not all conservative white people are racist at all. They actually judge a book they don't judge a book by its cover. They judge the content of the character. And that's kind of how it is up here. And she loved it. And everybody loved her. I've told a story about my roommate in Colorado, Curtis Banks, and we're at 150, so we'll wrap it up because Josh is tired. But Curtis Banks, CW5, Curtis Banks, he was my roommate when we were both, I was a specialist, he was a PFC, black guy. I was like, man, you got to come to Amarillo with me. He's like, Amarillo? Panhandle of Texas? No way. I was like, you got to come. We're going to go to the clubs, because I knew what was going to happen. We went to the Midnight Rodeo, the Midnight Fist Fight. The only black guy in the place. And I knew what was going to happen. And Curtis was super, super not comfortable. We go into the Midnight Rodeo in Amarillo, Texas. Curtis Banks, the only black guy in the bar, was the most popular person in the bar. Because he was different. People want to see, what's he doing here? And it's just like, he's one of us. He's one of us now. You came in here, you're one of us. It's just, because we're conservatives and we're all people. I'm telling you. They've got the script flipped, Josh. They got the script flipped. Conservatives are racist. No, you people are the most passively racist. You liberals are the most passively racist. Bigotry of low expectations. It's just the script is flipped, bro.
You're not wrong. I don't disagree with the thing you said, and we've I think we talked about this before. We made a comment before about how white liberal women are the most racist people on the planet, and 2, white liberal women are going to be the downfall of the United States. hands down. You you talk to you talk to a number of white liberal women, and dude, try to get them to find Rwanda on a map. Try and get them to find Ukraine on a map, Israel, right? Um, it's like when you pick your TV host, who walks down the street, same people be like, "Who do you think said this?" And they give them a quote, and they're like, and it's some racist quote, and they're like, "Oh, Donald Trump said that." And you're like, "No, Joe Biden said that, or Pelosi said that." You know, it's yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said.
Everybody give Josh a big shout out because it's late there where he is. I know he had a busy day, and I wanted to record earlier, but he's like, "Man, I got too much stuff to do," and I know he's hurting. I get it. So thanks, Josh, for hanging on. Thanks, Roger, for editing this. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening. A couple things we didn't cover. I actually did watch the Oscars, Josh. I actually did watch it because you got to be in tune with the culture. I feel know your enemy, right? Know your enemy. And I want to see what's going on. So I watched the majority of it. And I was really glad to see that Oppenheimer took the majority of the big awards
That's good.
as it should have been.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was nice to see Hollywood kind of making fun of itself a little bit, because when Ryan Gosling, I haven't seen Barbie, but Ryan Gosling played Ken, and he got up there and they did this whole performance where he's saying, "I am Ken," and it was hilarious. It was actually funny. It was actually entertaining because they were making fun. He was making fun of himself. The audience was laughing. They were making fun of themselves. It's like, I think that's kind of a good sign. But anyway, also, we didn't talk of the State of the Union. Whatever. Maybe we can say that for later. That's old news at this point. But
Oh yeah.
if anyone thinks that Joe Biden wasn't drugged to the gills, you got another thing coming. Yeah, I don't know. We appreciate you guys listening. I'm going to give Roger one more last shout out. He's on the road, hoping his truck doesn't break down, hoping that RV doesn't run off the road. Thanks for editing, bro. And everyone else, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured.